Hey, 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 good morning, Collabcast listeners. This is Captain Dave Jackson coming to you from an absolutely sunny Hendersonville, Tennessee. I looked at the weather app on my phone and it's like pure sunshine for 10 straight days here. That never happens because we've had storms rumble through for the last, I don't know, 8 weeks, almost all summer long. And now we hit this big dry patch, no rain, no storms, but hot and humid. It's been hot and humid all summer long, and here we go again. Late August, we're still in the mid 90s, which is crazy to me. And I'm used to heat. I lived in Arizona for 13 years. It's not like this kind of heat, it's completely different. But man, I'm ready for fall to come around. Football's starting, and let's just do the fall thing for a while. I don't know about you guys, but I'm up for it. I can't tell you how excited I am today to have with a new friend of mine that I've only met just recently because he's kind of new to the arena. He's with one of our partners at IAOA, HawkSoft. This is Michael Lee. Michael, welcome to Collabcast.
Awesome. Great to be here. Excited to chat with you here a little bit and glad to be part of this here.
Thanks for coming on. We appreciate you. I think our listeners are really going to be welcoming to hear what you have to say about HawkSoft and what you have going and what new enhancements you have coming out. You gave a little bit of a tease, so we'll tell them a little bit about that. But let's talk a little bit about you first off. I usually get the boring stuff out of the way, and then we get to the juicy stuff, a little later. So you're director of director of networks with HawkSoft, and you've only been with them a short time, right?
Correct. Yep. I joined HawkSoft here in January, so right after the first of the year.
Okay, so about 7, 8 months. And then what's your background before working with a software company?
So before working with the software company, I spent 19 years in an insurance agency here in Ohio. So I am based in Ohio. As with most HawkSoft employees, we're throughout the United States now, thanks to
Mm-hmm.
COVID. But I started out as a customer service rep, was an agent, and then became agency owner over the course of the years there. And then prior to that, actually, I was a teacher for 3 years.
Okay.
So education, then went into the boring land of insurance, as I call it, and then now
Mm-hmm.
into the software channel.
Instead of saying boring, I usually just say non-sexy. So,
There you go. There you go.
yeah, boring indicates, not interesting and nobody has any interest at all. Well, those of us in the industry have a complete interest. It's the only industry I've ever worked on, 44 years this past July. And so I'm showing my age, but I love it. I stumbled into it completely by accident, which majority of us all have to say. Almost none of us plan to work in the insurance industry when we're in high school or college. It just doesn't work that way for whatever reason. But
No, I mean, to be honest, that was kind of the same with me. I mean, my dad actually was in
really,
the industry. He started it in '87, and actually he joined the industry after being a truck driver for a while because he saw the money that insurance agents were making, or insurance companies per se, because my two older brothers always having accidents. So he was like, "Hey, let's
gotcha.
do this." And so in '87 he did that. And like you said, in high school, it's not something I wanted to do. I saw the hours and stuff like that my dad put into the agency, and all of the calls he always had, and I was like, that I don't want to be tied to things like that. And of course, we kind of put our own spin on it when we came into the agency and that sort of thing. But it wasn't something I set out to do, which is why I was in education for a while, and then came into insurance. But love every minute of it. I love the industry. Can't say enough about it, and it's fun.
So what I have to say about HawkSoft, you guys have been an absolutely great supporter of IOA. We will turn this coming January, we'll turn 10 years old. And when I founded this group, yeah, I knew it was going to be special and unique and exclusive if we only invited independent insurance agency owners. You must have an ownership stake in your agency. You can be a partner and have a minority stake, or you can be a full owner or a principal, but you had to at least have an ownership stake. So what I want to say about HawkSoft and the people that they hire, like you, for example, you're an agency owner. You've seen the software from the user end. So I think that's just absolutely terrific. And our users, I'm sorry, our listeners want to know that, hey, this guy from HawkSoft, who's only been there, less than a year, understands how these systems should be used and can be used. And I know in our group of over 9,000 members, we've got hundreds and hundreds of HawkSoft users. And you guys have been a huge supporter of ours, and we appreciate your support. So you can pass that on to the powers to
Absolutely.
be at HawkSoft, because we all appreciate you very, very much. So it's great that you have that kind of a background, so you can come in and look at. Obviously, you did a bunch of training when you started up and know the software inside and out, because now you're director of networks. So, for example, IAOA is an alliance over 9,000 agency owners, but you also then are working with, I imagine, aggregators and other network associations. Any of those groups, we'll say, you use the term networks. I'll
Yep.
call them groups, let's say. And so we're one of those, and we partner with you for many, many years. And so, is this a new position that they created, and you're the first person in that seat?
That is very accurate to say.
Very cool.
My experience with HawkSoft is my agency was a user from 2012 on.
Okay.
And so knew the software, got to know the company a lot through their conferences and really how they work with their agents.
Mm-hmm.
Always having that listening ear, open ear to kind of talk to the agents and figure out the product, where things should go, and that sort of thing. So it was an easy transition over to it, but really focusing on this role. This was something new that HawkSoft wanted to make sure that they were focusing on as well. As they kind of saw that in the industry right now, saw how things were kind of going to go. A lot of newer agencies starting up are joining networks, clusters, aggregators, and then, of course, our state associations and the other associations out there. So they wanted to make sure that obviously we had a voice in those as well, and that we're
Mm-hmm.
listening to those agents that are joining those groups too.
Super good foresight, I believe, on their part. So that's cool. And was it a vigorous interviewing process? Let's be honest.
It's not, and I think because they knew who I was, I knew them. The interview process at HawkSoft is really unique because they really get to know you as far as questions. It's not, really talking as much about your experience or what you can bring to the table as much as it is getting to know you. They want to make sure that they have the right people on the bus that can help move the bus,
Mm-hmm.
which is fantastic. And so they make sure that you are in the right position, in the right field, that sort of thing. They don't want you to regret coming to work with them down the road or anything like that. A great company that really kind of has the sight to see where people should be, and make sure that their talents are recognized and used appropriately inside the company.
That's cool. So, from your several months now being with the company, what's your impression of top leadership? You've got, the Hawkins family, obviously Oregon based, and so a lot of I know of more of your members are probably West Coast, but not that much. You're pretty well now spread out all over the country. Um, but what's it been like working with their leadership team?
Very easy, to be honest. I traveled a lot earlier this year with Paul Hawkins, our CEO. And I remember having a conversation with him in St. Louis at one of our conferences and trade shows. And I said, I was actually walking away from him at that point, and he said a phrase that caught me off guard, and I had to laugh, and I walked away, and I came back, and I said, Paul, I said, I always kind of cringed, not necessarily cringed, that's a bad word. I was second guessing a little bit my choice to leave the agency and kind of hand the reins over a little bit and go someplace that I had, was kind of new territory for me after 19 years. And
Sure.
I think anyone that's kind of in their own position and doing those things after that long would kind of think, am I making the right decision? Um, and I said, Paul, to me, it reminds me so much of my dad and working with my dad inside the agency and that sort of thing over the years. And he's like, again, he said that phrase, and when I came back, I said it is the exact phrase that my dad said a lot
Is
of
that
times.
right?
And
Isn't
so
that
as soon
cool?
as I walked away, I thought, is my dad here for a second? But it is a family atmosphere, and they really take care of their employees. They listen to their employees, but they treat that all the way down to the agents as well. And so, listening to the agents, listening to your concerns, your problems inside the agency, they really take that to heart. And that starts really at the top all the way down. And so the culture at HawkSoft is bar none. I've not seen a company that has the culture that HawkSoft has, that really every individual has everyone's back, and they work together to collaboratively move things forward and really for the betterment of the independent agent.
Hmm. How well did you know the leadership team there prior to coming on board when you were a user of their product?
So again, when I started in 2012 as a user of their product, really my first person that I got to know was Linda Anderson, who is the sales
Mhm.
rep for here in the Midwest a little bit. Linda's been with them for a long time, and Linda actually was in an agency prior to joining HawkSoft as well. Um, I got to know the Hawkins family. Really, it was right around 2018 when the first conferences really started taking shape for the user group. So the HawkSoft
Mhm.
user group, was formed right around 2017, 2018 as well. And their first conference was in Sandusky, Ohio. It really was
Yep.
a regional conference, and then all of a sudden it became the first national conference. And so those that started planning that conference in Sandusky, they weren't expecting the CEO of the company to come to that conference. They weren't expecting the other leadership people to come either, and they did. That was my first introduction to the people. And then in 2018 and forward, I've been at all of their conferences as a user. Just the way that they make themselves available to talk. They don't want employees to block them from talking to the agents. They want to
Mhm.
make sure that they are visible and that they can communicate. They want to make sure people feel heard. And if people have suggestions or complaints, they want to know about those things as well. And over the course of me being an agent, there were multiple times that I reached out to the Hawkins family. Paul is the CEO, his son Sean, who oversees development
Mhm.
and that sort of thing. Many times I reached out to them about some concerns that I had. And so they were always very easy to get a hold of, as well as respond and take ownership over things as well. I'll never forget, though, the first time I actually went out to Oregon to visit the home base there, and I was actually going to lead their
Mhm.
national conference, and right before COVID hit. So I was out there in December of 2019, got to know the staff a little bit, got to spend a couple days right there in their cubicles with them, talking to their development team. And Paul showed me the landscape of his farm and everything out there as well. And just getting to know them personally really kind of sealed the deal as, if I ever left the agency, this is probably where I want to go.
Hmm.
And it just made that transition a little bit easier there.
That's very cool. Paul has been to our conference a number of years, which is crazy. The CEO shows up at a trade show, go
Absolutely.
figure. And obviously, he gets to talk to a lot of his customers because our members, a good number of our members are customers, but also, those who are not. And, what do you like about our competitors' products? And those kinds of questions come up, I know, in conversation all the time. So that's a cool story about the family and the products and the fact that you are users. So one of the questions I was thinking about when you were talking in 2012, you started to use HawkSoft. Were you using a different AMS system prior to that?
No.
So you went from
Ironically, we weren't.
paper
Yeah.
to HawkSoft, right?
Paper to Hawksoft. Yep.
Okay, so the old file cabinets with full files with stacks and stacks of paper.
Absolutely.
And what was that transition like going somewhat paperless or maybe 100% paperless?
It was a unique transition, to be honest. The staff inside the agency at that time had been here 20 to 30 years.
Hmm.
And so, they were used to how things were. They didn't necessarily want to change. And it
Sure.
wasn't an easy task, to be honest. I think we looked at systems for almost 5 years before we
Wow.
finally pulled the trigger on one in 2012. And um, over the course of those years, people started to retire and that sort of thing. What really threw us into saying, "Hey, we need a system now," is because we started to hire new producers, and so it was our way
Hmm.
of tracking the business that they were writing, paying commissions and that sort of thing, to where we weren't having to use Excel spreadsheets, not relying on the information coming from our carriers and that sort of thing. That we could have
Hmm.
real live data. And so for that first transition, we used it honestly as a glorified filing cabinet in a way that we could track business and reports. Over
At
the
least
course
you're
of
honest
time.
about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because most people would have to admit that, but very few of them are honest about it.
No, absolutely. And when you would start to look back, it was ironic. We'd start to look back in the files, probably like 2014, 2015. I was like, we have nothing in these files anymore. We weren't filing anything. The old data was still in there, but all the new stuff was in the system. So we started
Because you're
to
downloading now at this point.
correct.
Yeah.
Yep, downloading. And so being able to see the data that way and starting to track things, we really started taking ownership inside the agency to look at different aspects of the system and say, okay, what are we using and what are we not using? Because let's be real, most people inside a management system don't use 100% of it. They
No.
use 30%, maybe.
Almost no one does. Yeah.
Correct. And so it's like, what piece of the puzzle do we want that we want to explore, that we want to make sure we're taking ownership of inside our agency and saying, hey, this is what we're going to start using. And so each staff person started taking on a different piece to learn, and then we started plugging those pieces into what we were using day in, day out inside the agency. To where eventually we just had the filing cabinets moved to another room, and eventually they moved out to the garage, and eventually we were able to scan everything and get them into the system, and we were completely now paperless
So
at
at
that
that
point.
point,
So
were you just scanning most recent deck page, maybe original applications,
yep,
just critical documents, not like
correct,
every piece of paper in the file cabinet?
correct, yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So getting
Cool.
the history in there at least, and that way
Yep.
we had that information there if we ever needed it. So
hmm And so now you've been on it over 12 years, so, or about that. So your employees have adapted. All humans are resistant to change, but once they get on it and they use it and that's all they know now, then they look back and they, I don't know how we couldn't live without it. So
exactly,
everybody, we all know that after the fact, but going in, it's really hard to realize that it's going to take a year or two or three. It's going to take a little time, but once you get
yep,
there, you'll feel like, and like a cell phone, how did we live without cell
absolutely.
phones? And everyone has one in their pocket today. So, as director of networks with HawkSoft, what's your primary objective in your role?
Really, it's to focus and continue on what Paul Hawkin started, and that's relationships. The bulk of my job is to reach out to those networks, those groups, clusters, aggregators, whatever you want to call them, those
hmm
associations, and it's to establish that relationship and to make sure that if HawkSoft can be of help, we want to be there. We want to be able to help in ways that we can. And not everything is not everyone is going to be a fit for HawkSoft. We
Sure.
understand that, but we want to at least have that relationship. So if we ever need can be of help, that's where they know who to reach out to type thing.
hmm
Paul Hawkins, when he started the company, was always very adamant that it's a relationship business. As an agent, it's a relationship business. We understand that. Yes, people leave on price and that sort of thing, over coverage or a claim issue or anything like that, but it's very easy to rely on an agent with a good relationship. And so HawkSoft always wants those relationships too. That's again why Paul Hawkins goes out to a lot of the trade shows, and you still see him as being visible.
hmm
He wants to have those relationships with people, and he's had those over the years. So even today, being in this role now since the beginning of January, every time I talk to him, it comes back to the relationship conversation. And so that's the whole goal with this with my position is making sure we have the relationship, and if there's ways that we can help, whether that's in education, whether that's in pieces to the puzzle here at in the program, we're able to do those things and make sure that our networks and our groups are being listened to as well.
Very cool. So, IAOA's annual conference, Innovation, is this October 5, 6, 7 in Chicago. Are you personally on the schedule to attend or this year?
It is possible. I know I have a lot going on right around that time as well, and some of the other conferences that I'm attending. But
hmm
being, in Chicago, you guys that's only about 2.5, 3 hours away from me. So it is
Right.
very possible. I do know Paul's going to be there. He is scheduled to be there, as well as Kenny on our team. some of our sales team members and that sort of thing. So people that are familiar with that, see some of these IAOA members around. So I may be there. I don't know yet, to be honest. My schedule keeps changing. So
okay, that's cool. I was just curious. And then also in January, INA in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yep.
Which I know you guys are, a huge participant at. Any chance we'll see you there?
I actually just booked my flight and hotel for there this week. So yes, I will be there in January. Absolutely.
Okay. So those that don't know, INA is Insurance Networks Alliance. And so this is a funny story. This started 6-7 years ago now. The very first meeting for INA was in Tempe, Arizona. And I had my agency in Gilbert, right, almost next door. And it was started by one of the principals at Live Oak Bank. Her name was Kelly Drouard, and Kelly has left and retired from Live Oak Bank, but still active in our industry. And it turned out the very first year prior to their first meeting, INA's meeting, she decided they were partnering with IAOA, and she decided to come into my agency office in Gilbert, Arizona. So I met her, we had lunch, and we talked about, relationships with networks and things, because IAOA was one of those. She said, there should be an alliance or some kind of collaboration amongst all the various networks. Sure, we look at yourselves as competitors. And she asked me a bunch of questions about IAOA. She said, how did you get together, thousands of independent insurance agency owners to collaborate and help each other, and instead of being consider themselves competitors, become advocates, and she wanted to know how that process took place, because she's got the idea that she wants to do this with all the networks out there, all the way from SIAA, the top one or the largest one, all the way down to, there's probably hundreds of them total, including the small folks.
Right.
Some are, very regional, some are national, some are on very local basis, and they're all different sizes, and they have all different roles and objectives. And so she wanted to bring them all together. She says it makes sense for us to put together an alliance, and so she did. In the first couple of years, we're in Tempe, and I visited once. Turns out, fast forward, Kelly's moved on. She's, taking life a little easier. She's passed on the reins. They're now based, I think, out of Milwaukee, I want to say, or Chicago, right up in there. And last year, IAOA partnered with one of those networks, the AC companies, and we white labeled IAOA Market Access. So we became a member of INA, and I attended my first INA conference this past January in Fort Worth. So they're holding again this coming January in Fort Worth. And so I got to meet a ton of the folks that I already know. Many of them are IAOA supporters in terms of third-party vendors or carrier people. There's tons of them. And so folks like you, and especially in your role, that kind of that's a collaboration of networks. It makes perfect sense for you to hobnob and meet and greet with all the folks in the industry, because my guess is you missed January this year in Fort Worth because you're just coming on into your new role. But if you're,
I was actually there. I was actually
Very
there.
cool.
I had literally just came on board 3 days prior.
Oh, wow.
And then,
hey, guess what?
like,
Michael? You're going to Fort Worth.
That's
and
right.
You're gonna go with some HawkSoft folks. And I don't know, did we meet at that time? There was hundreds of people.
There was a lot of people there. I don't remember physically actually meeting you at that point.
Did,
so,
yeah, but no. We'll have a chance to catch up a little bit, hopefully this coming January.
Absolutely.
Because I'm already signed up. I don't have my flight booked yet. Man, you're an early birder. But I do have my room booked and registered, so we're all good to go there. So that's cool. So I want to get into your software.
Okay.
So those that are HawkSoft users, they probably know it pretty darn well. But give us a glimpse of, let's say, one or two things that you can tell us about that are on the horizon, enhancements or, new things, new shiny things that are going to help your users and those that are considering using HawkSoft become even more efficient in the use of it.
Absolutely. So, HawkSoft has been working now for the last couple of years at least, on their new platform. It's called the HawkSoft Insurance Platform. Most current users are going to know it as HawkSoft 6, which is our version 6. It is our basically our next launch of redesigning the entire product from the ground up. If
That's a
people
major
have
undertaking.
It is a major undertaking. Our development team has spent countless hours listening to agents, but also fine-tooth combing everything. I can say, as of this time, we do have our first 5 agencies new to HawkSoft on the new platform. Our development team is currently working on finalizing the development piece of everything for migration of our current HawkSoft users to migrate over to the new platform.
So would
The
you call those
biggest
5 agencies beta testers?
They were beta testers, yep. So
They
they made
were,
sure
and so
they
now they're
were
on it
they
full time.
they're on it full, yep.
Gotcha.
They wanted to make sure they worked with our development team to make sure the bugs were worked out. And I can say internally, HawkSoft uses our staff use the platform as well. So we use the same system that our agencies use to manage our agencies. And so we launched actually with it back in February. And so we've been using it. We've been working out the bugs ourselves. And then, of course, launched it for some agencies new to the system. And then, of course, now we're working on making that availability to to new agencies joining the HawkSoft family. And then, of course, migrating those currently using HawkSoft over as well. So we do have out there, if you go to hawksoft.com/6 or forward slash, it actually gives you the migration time frame and the phases where we're at in the process and things, and that is updated routinely. So agencies can always go out there and figure out where they're going to be in that process. For those that use commissions and some of the accounting features and some of the large scale things inside of HawkSoft, they're going to kind of be put maybe into like first quarter of next year as pieces of those are all developed. But it is a huge undertaking. Again, it's been built from the ground up to make sure that there's things out there that agencies have needed and wanted for years. The biggest thing, though, and probably people that have said it for years, has been the stability with the new product. HawkSoft relied on, if you were a HawkSoft Online user, you were relying on third-party vendors to host the servers, essentially, if you didn't have an in-house server. And when those go down, of course, you blame HawkSoft for that. And so we wanted to take that reliability and put that with us. And so our servers, dedicated Azure servers, that sort of thing, it is going more towards the cloud type thing. You're going to be able to access a little bit more inside a web browser. But at the end of the day, you're going to still have that program, just like you have Microsoft products on your computer. You're going to have that app on your computer because that's where the full functionality is. But you'll be able to eventually do a lot of things inside a browser as well. But at the end of the day, the biggest piece of the puzzle is you're going to have the reliability of the program and that sort of thing. The next big piece is the speed. With the way that they've developed things now, what used to take hours at times to run a report for those larger agencies is now cut down tremendously. And for smaller agencies, you didn't necessarily notice it as much. You just noticed the green bar going across as you're running reports and waiting for that to download.
Right.
Now things are pretty, I would say within seconds, if not a minute. Everything is pretty close to being within that minute time frame for reports, which is fantastic. So you're going to notice things look a little bit different inside HawkSoft, but we wanted to keep it familiar with the agents. As we said earlier, people don't necessarily like change. We've all been to those company websites where they change it overnight, and we're like, wait a minute, how do we do this quote? Where do we find
Did
things? That sort of
anybody
thing.
think to ask
Yeah,
us before they
right,
do it?
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So being that we redesigned the platform, we didn't want to completely change things, and you go into this new thing and go, what the heck did I just do? So the functionality is still there and the same. The look of it is somewhat the same, but with some modern touches. And there's some new key features that are going to be there. So we've changed it to a task system a little bit more. So tasks have been completely redesigned and to function a little bit easier. for agents. So again, some key things out there that agents have been asking for years. But what this also does is allows us to change things and fix things a little bit quicker as well. You're not going to have to wait 6 months or 9 months for a new version to be released. It can be released next week or overnight for some bug fixes and that sort of thing. So again, some great things coming, some exciting times for HawkSoft, and some growth for some agencies. Again, some things that just are going to help agents down the road, and things that people have been asking for a while now.
Okay. So the things people have been asking for, what's number one on the R&D list right now?
Uh, well, the reports, the reporting side of things, that was huge. And as an agent, I always like the reports in HawkSoft. They're very easy to find, very customizable, so to speak. I mean, you can drill
That's
down and get
important.
any of the information that you want right out of there. But those things, there's things that agencies are wanting, more reportable fields, some things like that, some customized things. Some things are coming down the pipe for that, but a little bit quicker and easier. That was the big thing for many agencies. Again, going to that task center, in HawkSoft, in prior versions, we've always called them suspenses. Other systems always called them tasks. These tasks can now be assigned to multiple people rather than just one person. You can also put a task in there telling that doesn't associate with a client per se. So if I have to remind myself to go pick up my kid from soccer practice after school or whatever the case may be, I can put that in there and set a date and time to remind me to go do that. So that way you're living in a task system rather than trying to rely on multiple systems like your calendar, and that sort of thing as well. So again, a little bit more customizable. And I think that's the one thing that I really like about HawkSoft, even as an agent that I liked about HawkSoft. You can customize a lot of things. HawkSoft was built to help the independent agent, and that's fantastic. But my agency operated different than the agency down the street. So we may not have the same types of things that we do, or we may not build it the exact same. We may call things different types of policies or anything like that. You can customize those things inside HawkSoft. Same thing with your reports. Things can be reported and customized differently. Then it's not a one-size-fits-all type program, and that's what I really, really like about the system there.
Cool. How many employees at HawkSoft? Do you know roughly?
So in 2019, in December, when I was out there, HawkSoft was right around 74, 75 employees at that time.
Okay.
Through COVID, in obviously developing this new product and things like that, we've grown. We've almost doubled, to be honest. I know we're at
Is that right?
150-ish employees now, and we're all across the United States, which is pretty phenomenal. So, COVID hit, and it allowed HawkSoft to really say, okay, we got to move outside of our office environment, and everyone's going to work remote. But then what that also allowed them to do is bring people back that had been instrumental in helping with development or customer service and that sort of thing, because their families or whatever the case may be moved to another state. And so prior to COVID, they didn't have remote work. That allowed them to bring those individuals back if they wanted to come back. And then it also expanded their pool of people. And so everyone works remote now. Even Paul Hawkins, our CEO, works from his wood shop at his house. If
How many
you're
people
ever on
are in
calls
the?
with him, you see that.
So how many people are remote versus in the home office?
There's only a few in the home office,
Is that
actually.
right? Wow.
I think there's only a handful. There are still some people that are local that go into the office routinely. I mean, they do open it up at times, especially if people are having, network issues at home, or power issues and that sort of thing. I know that they have some wildfires out there and things like that right now going.
Right.
And then with the heat and things like that, air conditioning wise, they've offered people to come in. But there's only a handful of people actually in home office still to this
That's
day.
incredible. That's really incredible. So I have 150 employees. Over 100 are considered remote workers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
So you're
absolutely.
way more remote than even I'd call a hybrid. So I
Correct.
did
Correct.
not know that. Wow, that's very cool. So what's it like? Is this your first remote position?
It is actually, and when COVID hit inside Ohio, insurance agents were considered, essential, so we still went to work.
Right.
I actually only lived about 5, 6 blocks from my office, And so I would actually walk to work because there for a while no one was driving. So it was fantastic just to walk down the road and get to work. Um, so we still remained in the office and that sort of thing. But at that time, we were also doing a lot technology-wise with our customers. So even though we closed the doors during COVID, we were still doing live video chats. We were doing things on Facebook with customers. We were e-signing things, doing electronic stuff. So it really was kind of seamless for us. It really didn't put a big damper into the way that we operated, which was fantastic. But even as COVID started to dissipate a little bit and things started to reopen, the agency opened their door and that sort of thing, but we were all still there. So we did have the functionality where we could work from home if we wanted to, and that sort of thing. But this is my true first remote job. So
Are you enjoying it? It's different.
it is different. It took some getting used to, I'm not going to lie, especially the time difference with the majority of employees being in Oregon or on the West Coast. And so being an East Coast time versus West Coast was a challenge at first. But I have a great group of people that I know are on East Coast time with me that we chat first thing in the morning and that sort of thing. It was a challenge to kind of go from an office to remote work and at the same time a completely different job and company. But it's also good in the same sense. There's times I have to go work at in an office somewhere because I have to have that mental space away from home. But it's also nice to be home at times too. So
Yeah, very cool. So for the rest of the year, do you know off the top of your head, where will we see HawkSoft in terms of conventions, trade shows, that kind of thing?
I can tell you we're starting to ramp up a lot of our travel. So HawkSoft, I think when I started in January, they were like, "Hey, we're going to scale back some of our travel this year. We're not going to go to as many shows and that sort of thing." I think we've actually added quite a few shows throughout the year,
Really?
and I know September, October are really ramped up to be traveling out in a lot of the parts of the United States. So you're going to see quite a few of us out at a lot of conferences and trade shows, and just meeting agencies and things like that. So
Cool.
we talked about Paul going to IAOA. It wouldn't surprise me if Paul found some agents around Chicago to go visit as well, because as Paul's on the road, he generally tries to find some agents of HawkSoft to stop by and greet them, ask them questions, and get their feedback as well. So
Yeah.
we all try to do the same when we're out and about traveling too.
Cool. I do the same thing
Yeah,
wherever we travel. I pop in a lot of times unannounced and just surprise the agency owner and see if we can
absolutely.
take just a photo shoot and do a couple things. We don't want to interrupt their whole day, but it's fun to get out and
Yeah,
meet the people, So that's cool. Very cool. This has been outstanding. HawkSoft's been a huge, like I said early on, a huge supporter of IOA and our mission. We appreciate your support. And I know our members support you guys as well. And I don't know how many out of our 9,000 plus members, how many of them are users, but I know it's a good number. So
absolutely,
it's a pretty good
absolutely.
number. So um, we will continue to tell people about the HawkSoft story as well as our other partners, and we appreciate you guys. And if you end up personally being in Chicago in early October, you'll be able to say hi. And we're going to see the big purple cow. Do you know?
You will probably see the purple cow. I know that
Cool. This is
one of our
anybody's not seen it. It's like 8 foot tall. It's
absolutely. We have a number
huge.
of them too. Yeah.
Oh, I
We have
imagine.
a member
Yeah.
of our team that all she does is watch it. I mean, that's not all she does, but she part of her job is to watch all the trade shows and coordinate who travels as well as where Bessie, our purple cows, are going. So we
Right.
have
Right.
big Bessie, mini Bessies, and little Bessies and stuff like that. So you're going to see our purple cows out. Absolutely.
Cool. Do you know the story of the purple cow?
I do actually. It was
Okay,
part of
don't tell
when
us.
I.
Don't
Yeah,
tell
I'm not
us.
going to
I
say.
just
Yeah,
wanted to say
I do.
because I wanted to ask, does it have anything at all to do with a certain very popular author's book? You know who
Yes.
I'm talking about?
Yes.
It has
Absolutely.
something to do with that, doesn't it?
Yep. Yep. Our leadership team read that book
Okay,
and
so
started really
Seth Godin
implementing some
is the
things.
author, if you didn't
Yep.
know. The Purple Cow is the name of the book. I've got it right here on my shelf. It's a great,
Yep.
great book. And it's just Purple Cow is just, in short, stand out. Just,
Absolutely.
figure out how to stand out. And
Absolutely.
so be a purple cow in a crowd of black and white cows. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
So that's it. So that it's a cool story about how you guys adopted that, and now we got Bessie, this 8 foot or whatever huge purple cow. Do you guys have the little stuffed animal purple cows to give away?
We don't actually.
That'd be
I know we
cool.
have some purple cow stuff, but I don't think we have stuffed purple cows. So that'd be interesting. Yeah, we might have to look into that.
Throw that on the dartboard, see if that sticks.
Absolutely.
I was at a trade show in Vegas here a month or two ago, and Applied Underwriters, their animal mascot is a Saint Bernard, and they have these cool Saint Bernard driver head covers for your golf clubs. Yeah, of the Saint Bernard, and then they have just a regular old little plushy stuffed animal too. So they make full use of their mascot. So that'd be a cool thing to see.
Absolutely.
I know people would eat that up. I don't know what it is about these stuffed little animals. Oh, my grandkid or my child would love it. Obviously the adults don't care too much about it, but they do want the kids to have all those little cute things. So.
My daughter, I wonder where she's at in her bed half the time at night because there's so many stuffed animals in bed. So if I brought home a purple cow, I'd probably end up there too.
Yeah.
So,
honey, are you in there?
Exactly.
Are you sleeping? That's
exactly.
Very cool. Well, Michael, we want to thank you for taking the time with us today. It's been a pleasure getting to meet you a little bit and your role with HawkSoft. And like I said numerous times, we certainly appreciate your support here at IAOA and everything that your company has done for many years now, probably almost since the beginning of IAOA. HawkSoft's been a supporter, so that'll be 10 years coming up early next year. So we wish you the best in your role, and I'm sure we'll see you. Many of our members will see you out and about at conventions and trade shows if you're on the circuit. So thanks again for joining us. Absolutely. And enjoy your day.
Thank you. You do the same. Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you for listening to Collabcast with IAOA with Captain Dave Jackson. Production and distribution by Podsquad.fm, Riverside.fm, and Spotify for podcasters. Special thanks to Little Dog Social Media, Terry Champion, and all our guests and listeners. If you're an independent insurance agency owner, please subscribe to our podcast weekly. You can also request to join our agency owner exclusive Facebook group, IAOA, or Insurance Agency Owners Alliance at IAOA.com. Captain Dave Jackson signs out from sunny Hendersonville, Tennessee.